Lesson 9 The 4th and 5th Commandments. Objectives. At the end of the session, the student will be able to recall what students know about the 4th and 5th Commandments, to determine how the 4th Commandment teaches us to obey and respect authorities, those responsible for our well-being. To discover that the 5th Commandment also teaches us to respect and honor the sanctity of human life in all its stages. To recognize how the Church and its members respect life by striving to peacefully solve problems, avoiding violence, and to assess how one can avoid violating the 4th and 5th Commandments. Review. The previous weeks, we recalled the agreement between God and the Hebrew people through Moses. In this covenant, God promised to take care of the Hebrews while they promised to obey the commandments. Then we considered the 10 Commandments as two groups of directives, one pertaining to our relation to God and the other pertaining to our relation to others. We also studied that these laws summarize how to keep our relationship with God in the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd Commandments, and our relationship with others in the rest of the commandments. We also learned about the first 3 commandments. 1. To put God above all things in our life. 2. To be respectful of God's name and think well before uttering any harsh words, invoking God, Mary, and the saints. And 3. To set aside one day only for God. Then we also learned about discipleship in the story of Martha and Mary. This week, we will learn about the 4th and 5th Commandments. As our aging population increases, many issues relating to these 2 commandments, like respect for elders and end-of-life issues, come to light. The 4th Commandment: Honor your father and your mother. When God gave this commandment, God gave it to a people who lived in the nomadic environment of a close-knit clan. These were people living, surviving, and helping each other in an extended family situation. The commandment is meant to honor and obey everyone in charge of one's life, growing, living, and surviving whatever life's challenges come one's way. Now, at this time, at this age, this commandment encompasses the respectful relationship with all authorities with the task of caring for one's well-being. Parents, teachers, guardians, babysitters, coaches, and others. When you grow up to become parents, remember that you have the duty and responsibility to provide not only for the physical, but also for the spiritual well-being of your children and those entrusted to your care. As a child, you are bound by the commandment to obey authorities. Obedience is respectfully listening and trustfully responding to an authority asking us to do something in accordance to God's law and to a just civil law. Just remember that God is clear in that we need to put God above all. Your obedience implies trust in authority. Be guided by the Holy Spirit and use your intellect and free will correctly. Read pages 94 and 95 of your textbook. The fifth commandment: you shall not kill. The fifth commandment demands that we respect and protect the sacredness of human life at all stages of existence. As God is the author of all human life, how one's life ends is known only to God. God has His plan for us, and anyone who messes with His plan in this aspect goes against God's will and is accountable to Him. Committing an act, omitting an act, or participating in any of these regarding the taking of life is disobeying the fifth commandment. This commandment also calls us to stand against any violence to human life. Bullying, road rage, lynching, murder, abortion, suicide, and euthanasia are just some examples of ways humans commit violence against human life. The individual who commits violence against anyone is answerable to God above all. Acts of violence against family members, people different from us, and against one's self also violate the fifth commandment. Living a violent lifestyle includes engaging or being an accomplice in drug abuse, unhealthy eating habits, self-mutilation, unjust anger, prejudice, revenge, hate crimes, road rage are just some examples to avoid. Read pages 96 to 98. Our church makes a difference. The church stands firm, does not cave in, and speaks boldly against those violating human life at any of its stages. It advocates living the gospel and promoting peace instead of violence. Through its leaders, it proclaims its stand on self-defense versus violence, capital punishment, and the war. Read page 99 of your textbook. What difference does faith make in your life? The church calls us to avoid violence and promote a peace-loving life. When in a potentially explosive situation, remember to 1. Stop. Use your head and control your emotions. Violence begets violence. The effects of violence ripple onto others, not just yourself. Number 2, look. Focus on the facts and assess the situation from the point of view of a person with a strong love for God. Number 3, listen. Consider what the other has to say first and peacefully settle the conflict and avoid impulsive actions. Number 4, negotiate. Be willing to compromise to avoid violence. Number 5, run through the situation and figure out how you would have handled the conflict better as a God-loving person. Personal assessment. Have I complained about or talked disrespectfully about my parents? Have I caused tensions or fights in my family? Have I set a good example for my younger siblings? Have I taken pleasure in someone's misfortune? Have I said mean things about others behind their backs? Have I willfully endangered myself or others? Have I become violent with or physically harmed others?